Yeah, let's do it. And this session is being recorded. So if any of you who are here now need to like dip in and out, don't worry, it is being recorded. But hi, thank you very much for being here today. My name is Pippa Stacey. I'm based in York, and I think this session today is going to be quite a chill one. I just want it to be a really relaxed atmosphere. Don't feel like you need to have your camera on if you don't want to. There will be opportunities to participate and to get involved via the chat box or in a way that's accessible for you, but this is no obligation. I know sometimes that forced participation can feel like the worst thing in the universe, so please don't worry if you don't feel up to that today. Any other housekeeping? We have BSL, so feel free to pin if this is something you require. If you encounter any access issues at any point, just let me know via the chat, because I will be trying to keep an eye on that as we go through things. To briefly introduce myself, like I said, my name is Pippa. My pronouns are she, her. And to briefly describe myself, I am a white female. I have long brown hair and blue eyes. I am in my late 20s, although the Tesco delivery driver who wouldn't give me my groceries today needed ID because he thought I was under 18. So that's fab. And I have a disability that's a chronic illness. And some days my disability is more visible than others. Today, I would say it's less visible. But I will say that I do sometimes have cognitive fatigue and brain fog. So if you see me like losing my train of thought or glancing to the side of the screen every now and then, it's because I've got notes here. So that's what's going on. And last bit of housekeeping, this session is being recorded. So bear that in mind if you do or don't want to be on camera. Like I said, there will be opportunities to participate, but if anything you share, if that's something that you don't want sharing more publicly, just let me know, and I won't be sharing any identifying details when I share your contributions. And there will be time for questions at the end, because this is such a broad topic. We're all at different levels with it. So if there's something that I don't cover, feel free to ask away at the end, and I'm going to try and leave plenty of time for that. But yes, okay, let's do it. So I thought we'd start off this session today. We've got some lovely people here, some people who I don't know myself. So I thought we'd just do a little bit of networking. So if you're on social media right now and you're comfortable, I just want you to go to the chat box and say hello and put your social media handle in there. And then if you are here right now, I want to challenge you to follow at least one other person before this session is up. It's really important that we all support each other. The disability community is a really lovely place. So pop your social media handles in there, and yes, hopefully we'll get to know each other a bit better as we go through the session. I'm just going to admit a few more people. Lovely. Sorry for that really attractive face I just pulled. I don't know why I did that while I'm on film. Okay, so how to share your disability story online. This is a topic that's very close to my heart, because sharing my story online has completely changed the trajectory of my life entirely for the better. To give you a bit of context about my own situation, I haven't always been a disabled person. I acquired my chronic illness as a teenager. It took me another 4 years before I got the right diagnosis, and even longer still before I realised that I was allowed to identify as disabled. I think I was waiting for some kind of permission to realise that I could call myself a disabled person. And I think that's an experience that a lot of people can relate to. And at that time, and actually still to this day, my condition, which is called ME/CFS, there isn't a great deal of information out there. There isn't a lot of practical information, stuff that's actually useful. There's only so much you can do to help yourself. And a lot of the information out there is just put out with the best of intentions, but it isn't always that helpful. So I think my main motivation for turning to social media in the beginning was just to try and find some more advice on how I could help myself. And through doing that, I found this absolutely amazing online community of people with chronic illnesses. And that was the first time that I really found information and people who I could relate to. And just that realizing that I wasn't alone and that there were other people out there going through similar things, that was such a transformative experience. And I think it was seeing other people share their stories in this way which motivated me to try and do the same. And writing is something I've always really loved to do. So that transition did feel quite natural. So I believe it was Instagram that I started in the beginning. I just started sharing snippets of my story, how I was feeling, what I was going through. And from there, it just happened really naturally that I did start to build up an audience. I started to connect with more people. And over time, my confidence has really grown. And always, always the main motivation for doing that was just to find that sense of community and to not feel so alone at a time when I was becoming increasingly isolated from the rest of the world. But the fact that I started to grow this online platform has gone on to open so many doors and so many opportunities that I might never otherwise have had access to. So it kind of, well, it helped me to get into my career in the charity sector. It helped me to access freelance writing opportunities and other creative projects. It's allowed me to lean into the content creator thing and do the influencer thing. And it's even helped me to become a published author, which is truly one of my biggest dreams come true. And if you're watching this right now, and if any of those things appeals to you, I want you to know that all of these things are entirely possible to achieve. And if you want to share your disability story online, I really think that that can provide a really great accessible way for accessing those sort of opportunities that once upon a time might have been only possible to access by routes that weren't accessible to you. So as you might be able to tell, I am really passionate about this, and I hope to share some advice that's helpful for others as well. But if that's not enough to convince you, I thought we might start by identifying why you might want to share your disability story online, because obviously you are never obliged to share information about your health condition, anything more or less comfortable than what you're comfortable with. So why you might do that, on the one hand, the first reason is it might be that you're looking for that sense of community. It might be that blogging or doing social media is something of a hobby or something you're passionate about. And it might just be that curating an online space is a hobby that's accessible for you, and you might purely want to do it for that sense of enjoyment and that sense of empowerment that comes with telling your story in your own words. On the other hand, you might be more interested in going down the content creator route, thinking more about growing an audience, collaborating with brands, accessing opportunities in that sort of realm. And having a readership and having that loyal community who follow you can open up lots of doors in the future. So that is a really powerful thing to have under your belt as well. Just going to let someone else in. And the final route that I think is often not talked about as much as it should be is that if you are hoping to get into a particular career or a particular creative space, having an online space where you share your story can be a really great way of showing people in that field like a digital portfolio of sorts. It can be a really accessible way for you to showcase your skills and showcase what you have to offer and to really get you to be seen by influential people in that space. So whatever your interest or whatever your goals might be, that can be something to bear in mind as well. Now, I've shared those three things, and it might be that one of them has immediately jumped out at you and you've thought, oh yeah, that's the one that I really like the look of. That's the one I'm going for. Or it might be that you feel like you're somewhere in between. It might be that more than one of those things appeals to you. So I just want to reassure you that you don't have to have it pinned down straight away. And it might even be that you start out with the intention of going into one of these things and you end up going into others, branching into others. There's no singular right way to share your story. And what started off initially as just doing it as a hobby for me has now branched out into those other areas. So it's entirely possible that that could happen for you too. Now, the next thing I think you want to think about is what kind of content you want to create. And I'm going to ask you to participate in a moment. So what I want you to think about, well, if you're here right now, the chances are that you're probably already quite a creative and motivated person. You probably know that you've got something you want to say and something you want to share about your disability story. And you might just be trying to pinpoint what that one thing is. I should caveat at this point that most of the stuff that I personally do online does center around disability and chronic illness. That's something that intersects with every single element of my life right now. So that's what kind of feels most authentic to share. But it might be that you're a disabled person and you don't really want to share content about disability. It might be that you have other passions, other hobbies, and you might want to share stuff about that instead. So the point I just really want to make is, again, you should never feel obliged to share more than you're comfortable with. There is a lot of power that can be found in being vulnerable and authentic, but not when it comes at personal cost to yourself. And it's actually quite ironic that I'm sharing this at this point in time, because the last few months I have had to take a step back from social media and blogging and not do it as much as I normally do, purely for the sake of my well-being. So if that's something that resonates with you, please don't feel like you're any less because of that. But really, whether you're wanting to lean into the disability side or whether you're wanting to lean into the other side of things as a disabled person, I just want you to take a second now to think about you, the kind of work you do, and the kind of message that you want to emit to the wider world. What is the kind of thing that you really want people to take away from the stuff you share? And in a moment, I'm going to ask you to share just one sentence in the chat box that sums up who you are and what kind of content you want to share. Doesn't have to be anything fancy or flouncy or anything like that. It could just, for example, say, I'm Pippa and I want to write personal reflections about my own chronic illness and share advice that's helpful for others. Just something like that. It doesn't have to be anything special at all, and you don't have to stick to what you say at this point in time. This is just a little exercise to get you started thinking about those core things. So I'm going to give you 2 minutes now. So it's 17 minutes past. We will come back, and I would be really, obviously, no obligation to share whatsoever. But if anybody is willing to share, I will keep you anonymous. So feel free to pop your sentence in the chat box, and I will look forward to hopefully reading them. So I'll catch you in 2 minutes' time. Okay, I'm going to start bringing you back to this chat now. We've got a couple of ones that people have shared. I won't use names because, like I said, this session is being recorded and I don't have your consent to do that. But I'm curious about the opportunities that sharing about my disability could bring for other people like me in my field. Yes, that is a brilliant one. That's a really great way of doing something that's fulfilling for you and also thinking about how you can contribute to that space as well. And that's one of the great things about sharing your story, when you can have that dual purpose like that. This person says, I'd like to educate others on disability and get the public to understand how they can play their part in removing barriers, even simple stuff like flagging issues to venue staff or not blocking pavements. Yes, I'm very much here for that. That's a great one. And that's great because you've identified your target audience as well. You know the kind of people who you're going to be speaking to. This one says, I like writing about lifestyle, culture, history, feminism. I like to inform and entertain. I like that. I like that you're covering different niches there, but there's still that overriding thing that ties them all together. That's something that can be really impactful with blogging in particular. I would like to empower people with communication disability. And I can say for a fact the person who shared this is very much doing that already. And I'm a very big fan of their work. I love that. I'm looking to build an audience for my poetry, which often relates to chronic illness, and also share recommendations for books I read by disabled authors to raise awareness and visibility. I will be looking out for your social media. That sounds very much up my street. I'll just do a couple more. I want to educate and raise awareness of disability and access and disable people to feel less alone. Yes, that is such a crucial one at this point in time. I feel like so many people are struggling with that at the minute. I would like to launch my new business supporting others with ME/CFS to get the support they need to be able to start their own businesses. Again, very good timing. That is so topical right now. Oh, these are brilliant. Yeah, thank you so much to those of you who've shared them. They are absolutely brilliant. And I think that the diversity, even within that one bit, reflects quite nicely what the next thing I want to say is, and that is that there is no wrong approach when it comes to sharing your story. It's all about doing what feels authentic to you. You'll find so many rules and so-called tricks of the trade online, but I really think the most important thing is doing the thing that comes naturally to you and not forcing yourself to fit into a box that you don't necessarily want to. Now, the struggle with anything like this is that there's always a balance to be struck, especially if you're a creative person, with writing the things that you want to write and sharing the things you want to share versus the things that you've been told will do well or perform well or that people want to read. And obviously there's value to both. You can share the things you want and feel that personal satisfaction and gratification, or you can share the things that you're so-called supposed to share in the hope of growing an audience and reaching more people and becoming more successful in that way. But the thing I want to say is that it doesn't necessarily have to be one or the other, and there is a balance you can find between the two. And I actually think that being disabled or chronically ill people better equips us to find that balance, because we know better than most people the importance of being resourceful. We know how to use our energy and our time really wisely. So I think it's really good to be mindful of that split. It might be that you just want to focus on the stuff that brings you joy, and that is entirely valid. Or it might be that you want to spend more of your energy on that stuff that's going to help you to grow and to reach new people. And there's no single right way to do it. You're going to notice that's a bit of a theme through everything we share today. But I think just being mindful of that balance and what feels right to you, I think even just being aware of it can be a really beneficial thing. So if you are completely new to sharing your story online, and I'm very aware of the fact that we'll have people on here who are at very different levels of this, my best piece of advice is to start off any piece, any form of content, whatever form that takes. It might be a blog post, it might be an Instagram post, it might be a video or a reel for TikTok or other social media platforms. I want you to stop thinking about what you think you're supposed to be doing and just share whatever comes naturally. Just start drafting, just start jotting out ideas, whatever comes natural to you, and just say whatever the heck you want to say, whatever feels natural to you, whatever you want to put out into the world. There's lots of things we can do to optimize things and make sure they perform well, but that's something we can worry about further down the line. I really think at the beginning of that creative process, it's all about doing what you want to do. And yeah, this is worth saying. I personally believe that something you write that you really feel passionate about and that makes your heart happy has more value for your reader or your audience than anything that's been optimized to within an inch of its life to perform well. I would much rather read something from somebody that really has heart and really has that sense of self coming through, rather than something that you know has just purely been designed to try and do well with the algorithm, which is, as you probably know, is such an unpredictable thing to start with. Now, with this session, I realize now I've definitely leaned into the platforms that I use most personally, and that does focus more on the writing side. So I'm mostly a writer by trade, I'm a blogger, I do stuff on Instagram, but I always enjoy the writing part more, whether that's scripting a narrative for a video or writing the captions. But I do think if you're planning any social content in advance, there is that stage of writing where you're thinking about the narrative. So I hope this has value for you, regardless of what your chosen platform is. Okay, so again, as some of you are likely to know, chronic illness and symptoms like fatigue in particular can make the act of writing very, very challenging. Sometimes you'll start writing and even before you get to the end of the sentence, you forgot where the heck you were going with it. And that is very much the bane of my life at the minute. But when it comes to thinking about ideas and brainstorming the kind of content you'd like to share, something I find really helpful is having a running list in the Notes app on my phone. So whenever an idea pops into my head, whatever I'm doing, I just take a moment to jot that idea down, even if I don't have the time or energy to lean into it at that moment in time. And the beauty of that is that, one, you're not going to forget. I live in perpetual fear that I'm going to forget the idea I've just had, and it's going to be gone forevermore, which is, again, very much a thing that's happened to me. But it also means that on the times when you're struggling for ideas and you can't quite think of what you want to do, you've got that ready-made list and you can just pick off it, whatever you feel like creating at that moment. So it serves both purposes, really. In terms of identifying ideas of the stuff you want to share, again, whether that's purely for your own purposes or whether you're thinking about appealing to a wider audience, something I find really helpful, and it's perhaps a little bit self-indulgent, but it does work for me. I think about what experiences I'm going through that time. I think about what kind of thing I would struggle to put into words. And even though that's more challenging in the moment, I quite like setting myself up for that challenge and trying to explain something that might have once felt unexplainable. But other times I really focus on trying to write the things that I know that other people would find helpful to read. Whatever your disability is, whatever your circumstances are, I would put money on the fact that there's probably been a question that you've Googled and not quite been able to find the answer that you're looking for. And if you've searched that, then the chances are that you will not have been the only one. Sometimes even the things that we think are very sort of personal and unique to us aren't as unique as we think they are. And there will be other people who are looking for that information too. So when you identify something like that, it's sometimes those sort of topics that can make the most compelling content of all, and they can really help you to tell your story and to do so in a way that resonates with other people. So yeah, today, one of my best performing blog posts came about for that very reason. I talk a lot about working with a chronic illness and the challenges around that. And I was really struggling to find real life examples of workplace adjustments for people who have energy limiting conditions like my own. I could find all sorts of stuff saying that you can have workplace adjustments, but I couldn't actually find specific examples of adjustments that I could ask for. So I thought, you know what, no one else has done that, so I'm going to be the one who puts that post together. I did my research, I reflected on my own experiences, and I really thought about what somebody else in the same boat as me would find helpful on this topic. And like I said, stuff like that can really pay off. And to date, that has been one of my best performing blog posts of all time. Yeah, so on the surface, it might be a topic that you identify and you think, oh, that's a bit niche, I don't know about that. But I thought that very same thing. And it turns out there were thousands of other people looking for that very same thing. So it might be worth taking a moment to reflect now on whether there's anything that you've encountered in your own experiences that might be worthy for other people to find out about as well. Oh yeah, and we actually are going to do that. I should say that. So that's a little exercise to do now. Again, like you did earlier, you shared in the chat box. So I'm going to ask you at this stage, any ideas that you might have for topics that you might like to cover based on what we've just shared there. So what kind of thing would you either like to write, or what kind of thing do you think would be helpful for others that you have the lived experience to write about? And I'm going to give you 3 minutes if you'd like to share those things in the chat box. So let's come back at past, and I'll look forward to reading what you share then. Lovely. I've been cheating and reading these already. These are great. So we've got, again, a really nice diverse range. We've got how to choose a university when you have a disability. Yes, please. Very much needed. How to feel less alone with disability. Ways of finding your disabled community. Brilliant. I would like to help people to advocate for themselves to access better thyroid treatment. Yes, from what I hear, I think that would be a very valuable resource for people. How to come back to writing after a long break due to ill health. Oh, yes, that would be brilliant. Yeah, that would be a great post. I feel like that would resonate with a lot of people. Support services and getting healthcare when housebound and the difficulties there are. Yes, that is so important. And it's often, I'm finding a lot at the minute, it's often the voices of the people who are housebound or bedbound that don't always get the mic. So stuff like that is so helpful to share. And it's up to the rest of us to help amplify that for sure. Debugging the myths around people who use electronic communication aids. Yes, that sounds brilliant. How to navigate benefit system. Yes, please. How to take steps to get back to life while still encountering unpredictable health issues. Yeah, that's great. I feel like leaning into the fluctuality of conditions like these as well, that's something that really seems to resonate with a lot of people. How to improve, oh, I've lost it. How to improve brain health and brain fog. Yes. How to get the support you need. Yes. How to start a business. Yes. How to earn a passive income. Yes, yes, yes. And how to get your GP to listen to you. Yes, 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 yes. Those are all brilliant ideas. You've got quite a nice range there as well. That's great. And those are all actually, going off on a slight tangent, the how-to posts with that specific wording are often the ones that really make people want to click. So even those as titles will work really well. Dealing with family estrangement at Christmas in terms of illness, how to manage your energy levels and trying to work smarter. Yes, that's great. And the Christmas one in particular, tie-in posts to specific time periods is often really impactful. And I like that, like you often see the same kind of generic posts around Christmas and stuff like that, but I like that that one has a different angle and a different take on it, especially if you have lived experience of that thing. Support and reassurance for people struggling to find a GP who will take their invisible symptoms seriously. Yes, that's a really good one. No, those are all great. Those are all brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing those. I mean, from seeing those things alone, I have full confidence that everybody who has shared has all the tools they need to share their story online. So that's really brilliant to hear. So you've got your initial ideas there. That was obviously, I mean, you've come up with all of those just from literal minutes of brainstorming. So I've no doubt that you're going to have plenty of ideas. So now let's think about how we turn that initial piece and that initial content idea into a great blog or social media post. And the trick here is to learn how to share things that are your own personal reflections, but in a way that engages others and like compels people to feel a connection to that thing too. So I'm going to share a few tips that you might like to weave into the content you share, if that feels natural to you. And again, I've leaned towards the sort of longer form content that I am more likely to create, but hopefully there's going to be stuff you can take away, even if you prefer to do the shorter form content. If you're writing a blog post, or even if you're sharing like, I don't know, like a Substack newsletter, maybe even an Instagram post to an extent, it can be really helpful to provide a brief introduction and a bit of background about you. And the reason I say that is you want something, ideally, if you've got a blog or a website, what you really want is either an about me page or something that introduces you and something that goes into depth about you, because then in future blog posts, you'll just be able to link to that one thing rather than having to write it all out again. And the beauty of that is that anybody who's new to your site and they've clicked on a new blog post you've written, that gives them a way of accessing some context about you. But it also means that you can, in this new post, get straight into the theme or the topic of that post, and you don't have to waste either your time or the reader's time rehashing a lot of that core information again. That's something that's worked quite well for me. On my blog, I have one post about my chronic illness story, but I think I've ended up linking to that in pretty much every blog post I've written about chronic illness ever since. And it's come in enormously helpful, not just for new readers who might need that context to understand what I'm writing about, but also just in terms of managing my own time and energy. Subheadings. If you're writing longer form content, using subheadings to divide stuff up can make things a lot more readable and engaging. I did used to worry that adding subheadings would maybe make people more likely to skim read and miss important bits. And that can happen sometimes, but for the most part, having text that's divided into subheadings can make it a lot more visually appealing, and also a lot more easy. I've forgotten how to do words. A lot easier to follow. That's what I was going for. A lot easier to follow if you have cognitive difficulties, which are clearly impacting me today. If you're writing your piece and you're not quite sure where to add the subheadings in, don't worry about doing it in the moment, because you can always write the piece first and then you can come back and add those subheadings afterwards, and that can make it a lot easier. And again, like I said, if you're like me and you enjoy writing the longer captions on Instagram, thinking about subheadings and bullet points can really help to divide that content up, even on a platform like that. Whether you're writing or speaking or sharing video content, it's worth thinking about metaphors you can use that will resonate with other people. So consider the parts of your lived experiences that you think will be most relatable, because with blog posts in particular, people generally really like to lift quotes from those blog posts and to share those on social media. And that can be a really effective way of encouraging people to share your work. I've put an example here, and I think it was from that's not real. No, do you know what? That's not relevant. I'm not going to share that here. But yeah, in the content you share, think back about what you've written or what you've spoken aloud, and think about whether there's a quote in there that you really think will resonate with other people, because you can draw that out and that can really do wonders for helping your work to reach other people. Again, depending on what your form of content is, it's really helpful to finish with a question and to kind of invite the people who are consuming that content into the conversation. That can be a really effective way of increasing engagement and making people feel like their input is valuable as well. It doesn't have to be something complex. Even sharing your lived experiences and then adding something like, "Can you relate?" It's just a really powerful small thing you can do that opens up that conversation, and that makes people a lot more likely to join in, to leave a comment, to share, to engage. And if you do have the aim of growing your audience in that way, that is some of the stuff that can be most beneficial. Oh yeah, and I also said that even besides all of the sort of like logistics of that, even just hearing about other people's lived experiences and knowing that somebody has been empowered to share their own experiences in that way, that in itself can be incredibly gratifying. And that's one of the things I find most rewarding about doing my own stuff on social media, the fact that it helps other people to feel more open to share their own experiences. And it's entirely likely that that is something that will happen for you too. And I really hope you get to feel the sense of sort of pride and reassurance that comes with that. In the same breath, though, I usually do find it really helpful to add some sort of caveat on or a disclaimer on posts that are about my health condition. Anybody who's been sharing their disability story before will know. On the one hand, it can be really empowering. On the other hand, you can get a lot of unsolicited advice, a lot of unwarranted opinions, unnecessary judgment. And there's never going to be a situation where you can erase that completely. That's something I've very much had to come to terms with. But if you add a caveat, or if you definitively say, "I'm not looking for unsolicited advice," or "I'm not a medical professional, these experiences are my own, I don't reflect the experiences of everybody with this condition," that can be just a really helpful thing to protect your own well-being. So I think it's important to bear that in mind, especially if you're sharing content that's of a more sensitive nature. If you are doing the blog or the website thing, something that's been really beneficial for me is adding a where to next feature. Nothing fancy, just at the end of every blog post, I link to other blog posts that are relevant or might be of interest for whoever has read that piece. And that's a really effective way of getting people to stay on your website for a little bit longer, to have a look around. I might sometimes link to the books I've written or the ebooks or my YouTube channel, and just really helping people to spend a bit more time with your online presence and feel like they know you a little bit better. And I will briefly touch on SEO, although again, this is specific to blogs. And I will say SEO used to absolutely baffle me. I used to be terrified of it. I didn't know what it was, didn't know what the purpose of it was. But in essence, SEO is basically a way where you can make the blog posts you've written rank better on Google searches and help them to reach more people. And it doesn't have to be this big, scary, complex thing. It took me a long time to realize that. But you can just get free plugins, like the one I use is called Yoast, and it essentially just provides a little checklist before you hit publish on your blog post, and it just says, hey, you might like to do this. You might like to add this keyword in a few more times, add a subheading here, do this to the description. And it's just a really unintimidating way to help your blog post perform at its best. So I thought I would mention this. It's not necessary. I don't know why I said that. It is necessary if you want your post to do well, but don't feel like you have to do it, especially if you're just doing this as a hobby or a passion. But yeah, don't be afraid of it. I was afraid of it for a long time and there was no reason to be. So now we get that out of the way, I thought I would share some golden rules for social media. I'm guessing that pretty much everybody here will be wanting to lean into the social media thing, no matter what your goals are. And this is going to be the last section I share before I open the space up to questions. So golden rules for social media. We obviously all use social media in different ways, now more so than ever. So the things I share here, like everything else, maybe they won't be universally applicable. But something that I found that doesn't necessarily correlate with other people's experiences is that I use Instagram in a way that it wasn't necessarily designed to be used. So I've always considered Instagram as a sort of mini blog of sorts. And although you're supposed to focus more on the pictures and the visuals, and that is something that I have come to terms with over time, and I do focus on that now more than I did. But for me, the beauty of Instagram is having that space to write a slightly longer caption. That's always the bit I enjoy the most, and that's always the bit that people respond most positively to. So the reason I share that is don't be afraid to kind of lean into the stuff that brings you the most joy on social media. Again, we're fed these very set rules that you're supposed to do this and you're supposed to do this. But don't be afraid to do things slightly differently, because sometimes that is the very thing that sets you apart from everybody else. Something else that is valuable for platforms like Instagram is to consider pinning posts to the top of your feed. Ideally, you want something that really gives people a snapshot of who you are as a person and what your social media platforms are about. It might be a specific post that's introducing you as a person, or the work you do, or the reason that you're doing this. But you just want something nice and visible at the top, so that if somebody new comes to your page and they're seeing you for the first time, they have got access to the sort of information that will make them feel like they know you a bit better, and in that way make them more compelled to follow you. So that's worth doing, pinning posts. You can pin up to 3 on Instagram, I believe, and you can change them at any time as well. So you're not committing to this big thing, don't worry. This one is really, really important. If you're hoping that having a social media presence is going to open up more opportunities for you, it is absolutely pivotal that you've got your email address visible in your bio. Put your email address everywhere you can. Even if you've got your DM switched on, I know for a fact from working in outreach that a lot of people who do that work are prohibited from DMing people, so they won't be able to get in touch with you unless you have a visible email address. So my best advice is to put your email address everywhere you can and basically make it as easy as possible for people to get in touch with you if they want to work with you. So many people miss out on opportunities because of that reason, and it makes me really sad. So if you take one thing away from this today, please make sure you put your email address absolutely blooming everywhere. What else? Yes, don't be afraid to utilize hashtags. Again, there are different rules for different platforms. On Instagram, you can use up to 30 hashtags per post, whereas on TikTok, I believe it's best practice to just do 2 or 3. But yes, hashtags will help your post to be seen by more people. And Again, best practice changes all the time, but on Instagram, I believe the general rule of thumb is to have 15 hashtags that reflect your overall presence and you as a person, and then to have the following 15 hashtags as something that is specific to the post that you've just shared. So 15 that sort of stay the same across everything you share, and 15 that are tailored to that one specific post you share, and that changes every time, if that makes sense. I do have some examples of hashtags actually, so I'm going to post those in the chat just in case they're helpful. But it's really important to be mindful of people who are using screen readers when you share hashtags. So again, I believe best practice on Instagram is in your caption that you're writing, you're going to write your caption, you're going to leave enough characters for the hashtags, which is something I always fail on and have to make edits. But then you're going to put a page break, and then you're going to write the word hashtags. I'll show you how to do this in the chat, and then you're going to post your hashtags. And that means that people who use screen readers will know that there are lots and lots of hashtags coming, so they don't have to sit there and listen to hashtag chronic illness, hashtag spoonie, hashtag disability 30 times over, because nobody's got time for that. While I go and post, I'm losing the ability to speak. But while I go and paste those hashtags in the chat, I'm going to ask you to do one more thing if you'd like to get involved. Knowing everything you know now, I want you to go to the chat box. There are people here who weren't here in the beginning, and I want you to briefly introduce yourself, and I want you to share one of your social media handles for a platform that you're going to be focusing on in particular over the coming months. In fact, you know what? There's not many of us here. If you want to share social media handles for any of your platforms, for example, you might have an Instagram, you might have a website, basically just use this as an opportunity to share your links and to have a look at other people's links. I'm going to give you 5 minutes for this, so feel free to share that. I will go away and put these hashtags in the chat. But yes, essentially just take this as an opportunity to participate in the chat, say hello, and share your handles. And I'll see you in, let's say, 4 minutes. I'll see you at 50. Lovely. I can see some comments starting to come through there. Thank you very much for sharing. And I would really encourage you to go and look at the links that other people have shared as well. We've all got to support each other in these online shenanigans. And I am going to feel free to carry on doing that if you've started, but I am going to open the floor for any questions now. But the last thing I want to say from me is thank you for listening so far. You might be able to tell my brain is packing in for the day. My brain is not working with me today. And it's such a broad topic, but I hope I've been able to share at least something that's helpful. And if there's anything specific that you think I could answer that hasn't been covered, feel free to ask me anything at all you like now. But the one thing I really want you to take away from this is that there is no singular right way to share your story online, especially when it comes to things like disability and chronic illness. So don't worry too much about doing what you're supposed to do. And instead, I would just really encourage you to lean into the stuff that you want to do. Share your story however you want to share it, because that is the way that you will be your most authentic self. And I truly, truly believe that having that authenticity in the things you share is so much more important than having content that fits this very specific mold of what we're taught that successful content looks like. That is what I'm trying to share, basically. So again, thank you very much for listening this far, and I will open up to questions. Lovely. Okay. Benefits of using your own name versus being anonymous online. Oh, I can actually share some insight here because I have done both. Very, very long time ago, I did used to do this thing anonymously, and I used to share a lot less of myself. If you have worries about revealing your identity, or you're hoping to protect yourself for mental health reasons, doing things anonymously is definitely beneficial in that sense. And that is always the thing that comes first. Your health and well-being should always be the thing that comes first. If, however, you're leaning into sharing your story because you want to access opportunities, you want to network, if you want to do the content creator thing, or if you have ambitions to be a writer one day or to become well-known in your field, that is probably when I would encourage you to share your own name. Or even if it's not your full name, it might be your first name and your middle name, your first name and an alias. Just something that gives a bit more of that sense of you, I think, is important for accessing those opportunities. But like I said, not at the expense of your own well-being. Do you have a link tree, and would you recommend one? Yes, I do. I use Linktree. There are other alternatives out there now, and I can't tell you for certain that Linktree is the best because I haven't tried the others. But I do know that the free version of Linktree is sufficient. And for those who don't know, Linktree is when you only have space for one link in a bio. For example, on Instagram, you can only add one link, but having a Linktree means that you have a link that links to other links. So you've got one link, but when someone clicks on that, they can access lots of different stuff that you don't have the space to share, basically. So yes, I have had no problems with Linktree. What blog platforms or websites do you recommend for starting a blog? Again, can't say for certain that it's the best because it's the only real one I've tried. I actually no, I tell a lie. I started off on Blogger, which is a free platform. And then when I was ready to upgrade, I went over to WordPress.org. And I have had a good experience with that. I find it quite intuitive once you get to grips with it. It's not too overwhelming. So I buy my domain, which is like my website, so lifeofpippa.co.uk. I pay a yearly amount for that. And I actually, something to consider if you are serious about this is I have a web designer because I am not technologically minded at all. The idea of coding fills me with dread. And it is an extra cost, but if you are starting to make money, having a web designer just takes so much of that weight off your mind, and it just gives you the freedom to focus on the posts and they can take care of the techie stuff. I can recommend somebody who is a web designer with ME, and he is great to work with. Anytime I break something, I can just email him and be like, I've done it again, please help. And he's great. If you do want his details, he is called JPC Design, James Cooper. I believe he has availability, although he is in demand. He's very good at what he does. That's JPC Design. Are you employed or self-employed? I am self-employed now. I was employed and working in the charity sector for 3 years, and then I became self-employed again about 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. And again, if you are employed and you're thinking about that, I would encourage you to make that transition slowly and carefully. Often online, we glorify this idea of somebody quitting their job and quitting everything and moving into that. But when you do have a health condition, I do think you have to be quite careful about that change. So for me, I slowly reduced the number of hours I was doing in employment and slowly increased what I was doing in self-employment until it got to a point where I could justify making that change without risking everything. If you move blog platforms, can you move your content over or do you start again? I think there is a way of moving it over. I don't have a massive amount of experience. And I think if you are hoping to do that, obviously make sure you've got everything backed up. But if you are considering that, I would get the advice of a web designer or somebody more knowledgeable. I'm probably not the best person to advise on that one, but I believe that's possible. How long have you been making content online for? Do you feel it was slow to start with? Oh my gosh, I dread to think how long it's been now. I've been doing this a long time. I started in 2014, so nearly 10 years ago. That was on Instagram, and I started my blog in 2017. And yes, it was slow to start with, but again, I was doing it back then for very different reasons. Back then, I didn't even realize there were opportunities. I didn't even realize there was power in growing an audience. So it's definitely something that's built up over time. If you are just starting out, I would really encourage you in the beginning to focus on your confidence and really like becoming competent at what you do and building your confidence up in that way. I really think, I know this is so much easier said than done, but I really think it's valuable to take the self-worth you get from it, try to detach that from the number of followers you have or how well your posts engage, because it's having your self-worth attached to that can be so draining. So focus more on like sharing content that you're proud of and really indulging in that process. I think that's my best advice. And then you can start focusing on chasing the opportunities or encouraging those things to come to you. How long did it take to build your audience? Oh, that's a good question as well. Do you know, I think I remember getting to 3,000 followers when it must have been about 2 or 3 years after I started. So it took like 2 or 3 years to get to 3,000. I got to 10K in the lockdown. So that was 2020. So that was like 6 years to get to 10K. But I've never been the sort of person who's gone viral. There are people who have one post do really, really well, and that's them set for life. I can't say that's something that's ever really happened for me. It's definitely been about playing the longer game. It's been a slog. It's been a slow slog, but an enjoyable one. And again, I actually would. I mean, it's easy for me to say that I would prefer to have that slow slog than to have that one moment and then it be over. So don't be afraid to play the longer game. If you decide to change your Instagram name, do you think it's best to try to do it before attempting to grow a following? I actually don't think it makes that big of a difference, because when you do change your name, there are ways of making that transition gradual. So I think I changed my name during the lockdown. I started becoming a lot more me during the lockdown in my online presence. So before, this is so cringy, my username used to be Sassy Spoonie. So I changed from Sassy Spoonie to Life of Pippa, and there are ways of easing that transition. So you can like share content around that, so it's not too much of a big shock for your audience. So even if you have got an audience by that stage, don't let that put you off sharing or making that change if that's something that you want to do. What do you recommend doing to promote your content other than SEO? Let me think. There are lots of great groups on Facebook. So if you're doing Instagram or TikTok or YouTube, there are lots of great groups that are specifically for disabled or chronically ill people. Ones that come to mind are UK disabled bloggers. There's a group called Chronic Illness Bloggers. And there are lots of opportunities in there to share links to the stuff that you've posted. And then again, a lot of people support each other. They'll get behind you. Don't be afraid to cross-pollinate onto other social media platforms like Twitter. It's not called Twitter anymore. X, Threads. Yeah, so don't be afraid to share it in that way. Definitely lean into the hashtags. They make more of a difference than you might realize. And just, it's tricky. I don't like to say lean on other people, because I don't like inauthentic relationships where you're just sharing each other's content, but you can make really great friends and really great connections from sharing your story online. So that's often a way, just by commenting and showing love to other people, you can sometimes get something back from that as well. Although, of course, that's not the reason you do it, but you can get something back that way as well. Just being a good human being, I would say, is important. I'm conscious of the time. I will stay on a little bit longer, but I also want to say I won't take offense if you need to leave. I will do a few more questions. If you do need to leave or you're ready for a rest, I will just say again, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. And I really hope there's been something you can take away from this. But if you do have any more questions, I'm happy to hang about for a while. When you do a blog post on your website, would you share that you have a new post on your social media? Almost always, yes. So like I said, I have had a bit of a quiet spell with blog posts recently, but if there's something I've shared, I'll have that post go live, and then I'll also share a post on social media. I'll make sure that I've got links to access that blog post, both in my bio and on my stories. Just make it as easy as possible for people to find that post if they're interested in it. Something that can be really beneficial is if you've written a blog post, and we talked earlier about identifying quotes that you think might resonate with people. So sometimes I'll write a blog post and I'll lift that quote and I'll just make it into a really basic graphic on Canva, and that's what I'll share on social media. And then people see that quote and they think, oh, that's intriguing, or oh, I can relate to that, and then they'll click through. What's your favorite piece of content to make, either type of content or a particular one you enjoy doing? So I'm definitely in the minority here, because there's nothing I love more than a blog post. And in a world where short form content is prevailing, it's very, very difficult. I love longer form content. I love blog posts. I love YouTube videos, but right now, that's not where the opportunities are. So I have learned to love the short form content as well. I'm surprised by how much I enjoy doing reels now. I really don't mind doing a reel. And again, it's been very much about, like, for me, I just don't find any enjoyment in like it sounds like I'm trying to be a special little snowflake. I don't really find the enjoyment in doing like the viral TikTok trends or the dancing or the pointing. That's not really for me, and that's fine. So it's just learning how to use those tools, but to do it in a way that feels authentic to you. So yes, Reels I enjoy, long form content I enjoy. Instagram is probably my favorite platform, but again, I like it because I can share the longer form captions. Yeah. But there's something to enjoy in all of them if you look for it and if you do it in a way that feels good to you. How often should you post? Is there a rule you stick by? This is another one of those things where there is best practice, but I think when you have a chronic illness, don't be afraid to chuck that out of the window. I think you're supposed to post at a set time and date, and you're supposed to post regularly as much as possible. I think that's what the algorithm favors. For me, that's just not plausible. It's just not feasible. So I don't commit to posting on a set day every week. I don't commit to posting a set number of days every week. But when I do post, I always post at 7 p.m. I always post at a time where I know a lot of my audience is online and people have come to expect that if I'm going to post, it's going to be at this time. So that's one way that I find consistency in the realm of fluctuating illness. So don't beat yourself up if you can't do it, but maybe look at like whether there are some elements of regularity that are doable for you. Do you think it's okay to be in your PJs a lot when doing Reels or Zoom? If anything, I would actively encourage it. Yes, please don't worry about that. I think that's totally fine. At the end of the day, again, I don't want to be sitting at home and doing makeup and hair when I'm not going anywhere. We're not really doing anything. That like, don't be afraid like to pour your energy into the stuff you actually want to do. Don't worry about looking a certain way or presenting yourself in a certain way. I actually think there's just something really lovely and cozy about like seeing somebody doing their thing in like their PJs or in their comfy environment. So please don't worry about that. So if there are no more questions, I think we will leave it there for now. But like I said, there will be a recording of this going on YouTube. So if you do think of anything else, look out for it on there. I'm very happy to answer questions in the comments. And just to reiterate what I said earlier, thank you very much for being here. I know that time and energy is so precious, so I'm very grateful for you being here today. And yes, it's been lovely to meet you all. I'll look forward to seeing what you do online. I am doing another event tomorrow, but that's focused more on employment, but you can find details of that on York Disability Week's website. But in the meantime, thank you very much again, and hopefully see you soon online. Bye.